Good evening. My name's Yvonne English. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation here at Grove City College, which exists to equip you all, regardless of major, to create a better world. I would like to welcome you to the Fall 2019 Richard G. Staley 62 Visionary Entrepreneur Speaker Series. In my notes here, it says to pause for cheers. Obviously, you didn't get the memo.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you. So this speaker series was endowed in 2013 by Richard G. Staley to enable the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation to bring accomplished guest speakers to campus to explore topics related to real-world entrepreneurship and innovation. Mr. Staley founded Flavor House, Inc., a leading developer and manufacturer of unique flavors used by many well-recognized brands. And the rumor is possibly the ramen packets, the little flavor packets. So just so you know, Grove City born. All right. He received the Jack Kennedy Memorial Alumni Achievement Award in 2019, just this past fall here. And award presented annually since 1964 to alumni who have achieved distinctive success in their fields. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see these names sometime in the future under the Jack Kennedy Award. Tonight, you're going to meet amazing alumni who once sat in your seats, who have found success with a company you might have heard of, Chick-fil-A. And as if that wasn't exciting enough, E&I is treating you to a Chick-fil-A nugget reception.
Woo! All right. There's no applause.
I had a note here to pause for cheers. That was correct. All right. So now I'm going to ask Professor Tim Sweet, Chair of the Entrepreneurship Department, to come to stage to serve as tonight's moderator.
Thank you very much, Professor English. Good to see you all. I just have a quick question for the audience here before we introduce you. How many fans of Chick-fil-A do we have in the house? Just raise your hand.
Yeah.
All right. And now I'm going to... What's that?
Let's go Chick-fil-A!
All right. There we go. Let's go Chick-fil-A. All right. Now I'm going to ask another question. How many Chick-fil-A super fans do we have in the house? And that what I mean by that is, given any other restaurant choice, Chick-fil-A is your first choice of any other restaurant. Just stand up. Just see. Just stand up if you're a Chick-fil-A super fan. Extra nugs for you guys. All right. Well, we really are excited to have our panel of Chick-fil-A owner-operators with us, all of whom are Grove City College graduates. And what I'd like you all to do is just to introduce yourselves, maybe tell the year that you graduated, what major you had while you were here as a student, and where your store is located. We'll start with that. Jay?
Sure. My name's Jay Jannik. I graduated in 2008. I was a business management major, and my store is in Robinson Township.
Fantastic. Right.
All right. My name is Karen Baluman. I'm a 1996 graduate. I was a marketing major, and my restaurant is in Columbus, Ohio.
All right. Fantastic.
My name is Corey Kay. I graduated in 2009 and studied marketing management as well. And my store is in Washington, Pennsylvania, but I'm actually relocating out to Phoenix, Arizona in the next few months.
Oh, there we go. Great.
I'm Sean Philby. I graduated in last millennia, 1989, and I was an applied physics major here at Grove City. My restaurant is located in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Wow, from STEM to nuggets.
You know,
Awesome.
it was a good transition.
Fantastic.
I'm Sara Rett, and I graduated here in 2007. And I was a finance major, and our restaurant is in Bridgeport, West Virginia.
Terrific.
Test 1, 2. My name is Ryan Rutt. We come as a pair. I graduated in 2007 as an accounting major, and like Sarah said, we're in Bridgeport, West Virginia.
Fantastic. So, accounting and finance also kind of cues up to Chick-fil-A.
That's right. We make a wonderful nerdy couple.
All right. Excellent. All right. Well, let's give a hand for our panelists here. So I'm just curious, you all come from different backgrounds, different majors, different perspectives. What led you to Chick-fil-A? How did you get involved with the company? Anybody can field this question. Ready to start, Jay?
I love this question because this is kind of surreal for me because about 12 years ago, I was in your exact same seat and I was listening to somebody up here talk about Chick-fil-A. So we had a gentleman from Chick-fil-A corporate come. His name was Mark Miller, and he talked a lot about how Chick-fil-A was just a values-based company. And I was studying business management at the time, and I was also really interested in biblical studies. And I kind of was trying to figure out how do we mesh these two things together. And Mark really talked about how Truett, our founder, never believed that those two things were separate, the Bible and good business practice, but he thought that the Bible actually taught what good business practice was. And so I was just really compelled by that. And then my good friend over here, Corey, was a couple years ahead in the process, and so he kind of guided me along when I had some questions when the time came. But that was the beginning of it. Was just kind of hearing Mark talk about Chick-fil-A, the values and how they did business.
Great, thanks. Karen, how did you get started?
Sure. Well, I'll say when I was sitting in your seat, I had never heard of Chick-fil-A. I can still remember being in the cafeteria and a friend from Maryland being like, "You've never heard of Chick-fil-A?" I'm like, "No, I've never. What is it? I have no idea." So didn't know until I moved out to Philadelphia after graduating from here, and that's when I tried it for the first time. But I was actually working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. That's where I went directly after graduation. I stayed there for 13 years, and I was at one of our annual seminars down in Florida, and there was a speaker that was he was speaking on customer loyalty, and he was talking about companies that, just had great customer loyalty and just companies he was in love with, and he went on this Chick-fil-A tangent, and he started talking about the Chick-fil-A operator opportunity, and all 7,000 of us were like, "That sounds really good." And I knew Chick-fil-A had, a Christian background, and so that kind of intrigued me. I'm like, wow, I didn't think there was anything. I didn't necessarily want to move to Atlanta, but the opportunity he described was kind of similar to what I was doing, dealing with people and customer service, and I was like, wow, that sounds like something I could do, and it helped me move back closer to family in Ohio, and that's kind of how I came. And then the weirdest thing, my first seminar with Chick-fil-A, the same speaker was there talking again about customer loyalty, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's all come full circle, like there it is again. So
Perfect.
kind of cool.
Corey?
Yeah. So, Chick-fil-A for me was a pretty big accident. No, as I look back, it's pretty remarkable. And I studied here, marketing management, and I wanted to take that and do foreign missions work. That's where my heart was at the time, and my wife and I met here, and that was our plan. That's what we were going to do. So as I looked at paying off my school loans, I knew I needed to get a job first before I started asking other people for money to support me. And that was the plan. But I think many employers saw that, and they saw that I was just looking for a job and not necessarily a passion. So I got passed up on several different interviews that I had, and found myself jobless and 2 months from getting married, and pretty nervous. Thankfully, my wife's parents still let me marry their daughter, which is great. And just a few weeks before the wedding happened, Sean Philby and I got connected. I had emailed Sean because I went in from a Snag-a-Job application. I applied to a Chick-fil-A in Columbus, Ohio at the time. And
Almost got to hire
right.
him. But
There you go. So different Chick-fil-A. And they were hiring for a marketing director, and they had already hired for the position. But in the meantime, I looked in the alumni database, so use it. It works really well. And Sean Philby's name came up as somebody who was connected to Chick-fil-A. So I emailed him, and the rest is kind of history. I mean, there's another fun part to the story, I guess. Sean emails me back. He's like, I love Chick-fil-A. I'm so excited to open my store. I'm in chicken school. That's why you didn't hear from me for a couple weeks. And I'm just like, what is this? What's going on? I don't know much about the company. Just like Karen, like KFC was a restaurant of choice for my family growing up because it was convenient. So Sean said, hey, why don't I fly you out to interview for a management position? And I was like, fly me out? What are you talking about? like what is this? And Sean made that decision. I mean, he knew how important good people were to his business, and he did some research and thought I was a good person. and flew me out and got to have dinner with his family, got to attend a meeting with local operators ahead of him opening his restaurant, and came on board, and just the sheer passion that he had for the business was infectious, and the people piece, and it influenced me tremendously, and it probably was within a couple weeks that I decided that I wanted to own and operate my own restaurant as well.
Mind if I dig a little deeper in something you said?
Yeah.
Chicken school. What's chicken school?
Sure. So the technical term at the time was FRL, or Fundamentals of Restaurant Leadership. And it's just the time. So Sean, I'm stealing your thunder, but had a 20-year military career and had no Chick-fil-A experience when he came to the table and started to open up his restaurant. So our restaurant experience was the same day, I think, right? and so that's just a chance to acquaint the outside candidates in particular with the business, and a chance to expose them to many different levels in a condensed 8-week period for you at the time, 5 week.
I only had 5.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's chicken school, as Sean called it.
Terrific. All right, Sean, so what's your story in terms of connecting to Chick-fil-A?
Sure. Like Corey alluded to, I graduated with the last Air Force ROTC class here at Grove City College in 1989. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant right out of school. I did 20 years in the military, and at the 20-year point, I was thinking to myself, do I really want to continue to do this? I was grinding along. I could have probably could have got it promoted to colonel if I really wanted to, but I felt that I'd been promoted to my level of competency. And so I decided to look around, and one of the things the military does to help military members transition into the civilian life, because I'd never done an application, I've never done interviews, because I got the job right out of college. I mean, so I didn't have to worry about what you guys are worried about right now.
That was the deal with ROTC.
Yeah.
You're a second lieutenant.
I got
like
a
that.
job, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things the military helped us do was realize that when you're looking for a company, you need to look for the culture of that company to see if you would be a good match for that. And I really didn't understand what in the world they were telling me about. Culture, how do you understand what the culture of a company is? And the more I got acquainted with Chick-fil-A, and the more as I went into this process, the more I realized this was the culture that I was going to thrive in. Based on biblical principles, Chick-fil-A really wants you to succeed. That's their whole goal is to make you successful. I don't think anybody would disagree with me on that. And so at the 20-year point, I put my application into Chick-fil-A, and 9 months later, they moved me to Reading and opened a restaurant there. So.
Wow, fantastic. All right, Sarah. Oh, and maybe tell your story together, however you want to tell it.
Well, our story is very, very closely linked. We both had careers we really enjoyed. As for me, I was a CPA tax guy. I love doing taxes. I don't care what you all think about that.
Professor McFeeder's in the background. She's cheering. Look. She's so excited that she said that.
But in my 10 plus years working with businesses, part of my passion was it's great helping them with their businesses, but I'd love to operate my own business someday. And kind of tinker with some different ideas, but honestly, starting a business from scratch, entrepreneurship, is really hard, not really in line with what I'm pretty good at. But then colliding with that was Chick-fil-A opening up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I was enamored with going in there and seeing high schoolers smile at me and saying, like, what can I do for you? I'm like, why are they smiling at me? What is going on? What have they been taught, or what have they been coerced with that they're like helping me so kindly? In short, what Chick-fil-A would call, I became a raving fan. I wanted to know what was the secret sauce. Why was this so successful? So that planted the seed, started investigating what does it take to become a franchisee of this wonderful place, and started walking through the process. My first phone call was to Sean Philby. So he has a little bit of a tree going on here. And in short, left the job I really, really enjoyed to pursue a dream job. And it's and working together with my wife to run this has been an awesome journey. I'm the shortest tenured of anybody, or we're the shortest tenured of anybody on stage, but it's been an awesome journey so far.
Terrific.
How long have you been at the restaurant?
We've been there about 19 months.
19 months,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So Sarah left a job she really enjoyed. I left a job I really enjoyed, but again, it's following a dream.
So we all have had certainly a food experience at Chick-fil-A, but we've also had that face-to-face customer experience. And I think that's one of the first things that hit me too, just as a customer. Tell us more about that, about the commitment to customer service, how you get that done. What kind of training goes on? Tell us more about that.
Well, these guys are too shy to say it, so I'm going to say it for them. The reason why you find such friendly faces at Chick-fil-A is because of Jannik, because of Karen, because of Corey, and because of the Ruts. These are the people that are leading the restaurants, and the Chick-fil-A model is very, very different than other restaurant chains. If you were a McDonald's owner, you could own 10 or 12 of them. In Chick-fil-A, the first 5 years, you can own one, and that's only one. And so you pour yourself into that restaurant and into the people that you hire, and it becomes a family. And what you want from your own kids is sometimes what you want for your own family, and the restaurant takes on the personality of each one of the operators. And that's why when you walk into a Chick-fil-A restaurant, that you're meeting Jannik, even though you're meeting his employees. You're meeting Karen, and because they're so passionate about the customer service and the passionate about the business that it transcends down to the employees.
Yeah,
and I'll just, oh, sorry. I'll add, one of the things that I think Trent used to say too was he'd ask people who's the most important person that works at Chick-fil-A. And some people are automatically thinking about the operator or the CEO, but like he would counter and say it's the person working at the front counter. Because that's the person's first experience with the brand. And so just the belief that Trent had in that, I think trickled down through the entire organization, that we're always going to commit to hiring people who could represent us the way we wanted to. And so I think a lot of us, when we sit down and talk to potential candidates, we're looking for people who naturally can smile, have good eye contact, show some enthusiasm. So we're screening a lot for those characteristics.
Okay.
You can't teach. Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say you can't teach that, because I get questions a lot like, oh, can you tell us what you do to train for customer service, or can you come talk about customer service training? And in my head, I'm like, I have nothing to say. We just hire the right people. If they're not going to smile in the interview, you can't teach them. So
that's actually a big qualifier then. Mm-hmm. The level of friendliness that they exude in an interview situation.
Mm-hmm. And I would say a big word around Chick-fil-A is stewardship. So in the process, I don't know what everybody's individual experience here is, but the process to become an operator is a long one. Sean said 9 months. It's probably one of the quicker ones.
Pretty short, yeah.
But one of the things that they drill in, especially in the last interview, is Chick-fil-A has done a lot of work to build what they have. And if we're about to go run our own Chick-fil-A, we're representing not just us, we're representing the brand, and we're stewarding the brand. And in the same way, when we look to hire, it's if someone's going to be interviewing, I'm saying, when you put on this name tag, you're not representing yourself. You're representing us, like Sean said, you're representing Jay Jannik and Sean Philby, but you're also representing Chick-fil-A's across the country. So take that seriously when you put on the name tag.
I would add to just that, to answer the original question as well, is that we're rested. So, when Truett made the decision to continue to stay closed on Sundays, as many other businesses changed their mind there, he did that because he believed it was the best thing to do. It was a decision based out of excellence. And this is what's right for my people, for my family, and just committed to that from an early time. At the end of his life, he'd get asked all the time, quite frequently, when are you going to open on Sundays? Capture those extra sales you're missing, the profit. And he said, you know what? Like, when I made that decision to continue to stay closed on Sundays, I made it out of excellence. But today it would be the most successful business decision that I ever made. And people, okay, like, why is that? And I think to the point, in an industry that's plagued with burnout, people that are overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, we have a day that no matter what, how busy we are 6 days a week, and we're busy. I mean, it's a hard job for our team members to execute on a day in, day out business. But they have no concern that they're going to be asked or called in on a Sunday. They guarantee that day off, and it's huge. So whether they choose to worship, just take that time, they get to rest, and that brings them in fresh Monday, and it's a huge blessing to our business.
Wow, that's a great perspective. Around here, we talk about redemptive entrepreneurship, building a faith-minded, kingdom-minded business or nonprofit organization that seeks to have impact on the world, and that either points to Christ or demonstrates in principle, in operations, in any layer of our business, the reality of God's work in our lives. We see as customers, we get friendly people, we get good food. We hear about, of course, Chick-fil-A's reputation for not being open on Sundays. Tell us more about some of maybe the hidden ways that stewardship or that redemptive mindset helps to guide you in each of your businesses.
Well, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say that, I think one of the biggest ways is how we interact with our people. So we talk a lot about in our restaurant about grace. And so how do we have grace-filled conversations when we have to correct or coach employees who aren't doing well? How do we have grace and understanding, what barriers are they facing and what are their experiences? And they're bringing those to work. And so how are we believing that if we've been redeemed by Christ, that anyone should be given grace and given a second chance? Now, obviously, you have to make hard calls sometimes too, but so we talk a lot about grace. And part of our passion in doing this is giving people a second chance. And so when we see someone come in for an interview, we might not turn someone away that other people might turn away immediately. And sometimes we get burned for that. But sometimes someone really demonstrates an ability to take a second chance and do something with it. And so that's one way that we, in evaluating potential employees and treating our current employees, we talk a lot about, second chances and redemption and grace in that. I don't know if you want to talk about your...
And I was just going to say, one of the things that's been big for me with leading my business is what we call the noble cycle. And so we talk about kind of the critical success factors for our business, and we talk about having good people, leading to a good customer experience, which leads to sales growth and ultimately leads to financial return. And I think that last piece is like where when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, that's mainly coming to me as the owner. But then I say it doesn't stop there. Like we want to create a cycle where we're reinvesting back into the people. When we do that, we feel like every area is going to get stronger and stronger. So I think that the mindset that Chick-fil-A instills in you is to create those cycles where you're constantly growing and developing yourself and those around you, which I think is quite redemptive when you think about it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, Karen.
I have a story. This is not my story, but it's an operator in my market, and we just all met today, and he shared this, and I just thought it was pretty amazing. He had a leader who was fairly, probably 22-ish, and very sharp, very good at detecting when someone's trying to scam her or whatever. However, she got taken by a phone call that somehow convinced her that she needed to, I don't even know the details, but take $4,000 somewhere and give it to somebody. And it was just a very threatening type thing where, I don't even know what it was. A bill was overdue or whatever it was, but it had to be handled that way. So somehow she followed these instructions, did it, realized after the fact that that was not at all legitimate, had to tell her operator, that I just lost $4,000. And he was, of course, a little bit upset. However, the way he handled it was pretty amazing. And he just talked about how God gives him grace, so he needs to show the same thing. He's like, how can I accept forgiveness for all the things I've done if I'm not willing to do the same for my employee? And she's not a believer, so he's like, it gave me an opportunity to actually share my faith with her and why I was able to react the way I did. And it's just turned into a pretty cool story and an opportunity to really speak into her. So.
One of the things that Truett had done in the past, and these guys I don't think actually experienced it, but I did. We have servant leadership. We are closed on Sundays. But one of the other things that Chick-fil-A observes is actually the year of Jubilee. It's a Jewish tradition where at the end of 7 years of 7 years, all debts are forgiven. So, being the brilliant businessman that I was with a physics major,
And a great leader you had.
and I had great leadership at the time. At the end of my first year in 2009, I lost $32,000 for the company. So I was not running a profitable
Congratulations.
business. Thank you.
Yeah.
Most of it was taxes, for the record. Thinking about voting for Elizabeth Warren, I have a few messages for you. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on that soapbox.
We'll save that for the poli-sci discussion
you can talk
later
to me
on.
afterwards.
Graham, we'll do that to you.
So I lost $32,000 my first year, and so that, of course, that carries over into the next year, and it was going to take me approximately 16 months to pay all that back to Truett. However, on January the 1st of 2010, a paper went in front of Truett Cathy, our founder, that said, "Hey, Sean Philby owes you $32,000," and he said, "No, he doesn't." And he wrote off that debt that I owed the company, and I got paid for the first time in January of that following year. So if you think about that, Truett used to call it the loyalty effect. So what do you think that did for my motivation to work for Chick-fil-A even harder, right? I mean, I worked hard not to do $32,000. It could have been worse. But here I am, January 1st, 2010, and I'm debt-free because Truett did not want to carry that over. Because if we're in business together, I want you to make money this month. And I did, and I lost money in February, but that's a different story. But after that, it's been really uphill. But I really appreciated, Truett, using biblical principles in his business. We're not a Christian organization. Don't anyone ever think that. We're not Christian. Organizations can't be Christian. We are a for-profit business, and I like to repeat that all the time to my staff. But Truett saw some wisdom in the scriptures, and he applied that to the business situations, and that's why I really believe that Chick-fil-A is as successful as it is today.
Fantastic.
And I'll share a story that piggybacks off what Sarah was saying. Having graceful conversations with employees, and sometimes the hardest things, Sean will say this all the time. Sean, everything's going back to you. But the best thing about this career is people. The worst thing about this career is people. And sometimes you see such potential in some people, and you see them make mistakes, and you give them a second opportunity. And they say, yeah, I'm going to do better, and they just don't live up to it. And we had one of those who I just wanted so badly to work out. Finally, I had to let it go and had to fire him. And then he filed for unemployment, which we said, no, you can't do that. So then he appealed because West Virginia said, no, he can't have it. So he appealed and said, no, we want to have a hearing. So I was out of town, but I did a phone call, and I was in front of a judge with the judge and him sitting there. And I had to testify, and he had to testify, and he had some questions for me, and it was back and forth, and all of a sudden he starts breaking down and talks about how hard of a year it's been and all this, that. It was, I actually believe that he was crying for real. But in that very moment, in front of a judge, I told him exactly what I thought, and it was, you have such potential. I love you as a person. It's the right decision to have fired you, but I believe that you have a great future in front of you. And I could tell the judge was kind of taken aback. It was kind of a weird moment. I was on the phone and all that. But it's one of those moments that I feel like we have this great privilege of speaking into people and seeing potential. And even if it is firing them, telling them, you still have it. By the way, he won his appeal.
But it gave you a moment to articulate an application of the gospel in front of a judge and someone who clearly didn't share your values.
Absolutely.
To Sean's point about us being a for-profit business, I mean, I have a lot of interest from people who are really strong in their faith, and they want to come in and apply their faith and view Chick-fil-A as a full-time ministry. And that just can be really, really dangerous in my experience, because the team member that's willing to come in and do the hard work ministers to the rest of my team way more than somebody that comes in and just wants to share their faith and is lazy. So the work that we do, I think that's something that I've come to understand a lot more of, just how important that is to the Lord, that we get the sandwich right, that we live up to the standards, that we smile, that we execute on these things that we've been asked to do with excellence, and getting team members to kind of participate and come together around a shared vision to be able to do that. We talk about the V in our serve model with Chick-fil-A is value, results, and relationships, and really marrying those together. I don't think there's a company in the world that does that better. This idea that we don't just see people for who they are in terms of what they can add value to us for us, but we see them as individuals, as people with lives outside the restaurant, and coming to understand them holistically beyond what they can offer. And that leads to better results. It's not what inspires us to have those relationships, but it's a result of really caring for people well.
These values run deep into every facet of your company. And, you know, a lot of people look at Chick-fil-A as a brand and kind of associate a kind of a faith-mindedness with the company. Even, I think, the world that doesn't share our values sees Chick-fil-A in that respect. Do you see that transparency? You've told a couple stories here, but do you really see that kind of transparency, that authenticity carrying up even to the highest levels of corporate ranks?
We were just talking about that. In fact, we were complimenting Jay on his nice socks.
Well, let's see your socks here, Jay.
There's just stripes.
There's stripes. All right, let's give Jay a hand for his socks. All right. Did you get those in chicken school?
I did not.
Okay.
My wife probably ordered them on Amazon or something.
But Jay, you want to tell him why I know what your socks
Oh yeah,
look like?
so just at our most recent regional planning, Dan Cathy, our CEO, did a devotional to start off one of our sessions, and it was on Joshua chapter 1, about being strong and being courageous in the Lord. And he just asked all of us to remove our shoes to kind of get us in the mindset of being on holy ground and thinking about the challenges that were ahead of us and the anxieties and fears that many of us were feeling with taking our business to the next level, but just to take that moment together and really consecrate ourselves to the Lord and trust Him. So, yeah, the answer is yes from the top down.
And so the CEO had the mic for 30 minutes, and he could have talked to you about anything. And what did he decide to talk to you about? Joshua 1 is what he could have yelled at us for labor numbers or food cost numbers or food safety or making sure the drive-through goes quickly. He could have talked about any of that. And did he mention any of those topics?
No, nothing. And even last year at our seminar, the whole theme was around really guarding your heart. The verse in Proverbs, or guard your heart, for out of it flows the streams of life. And just people working at Chick-fil-A concerned about operators dealing with burnout and various other issues. The whole content, like Sean says, they have us there. The cost for them to fly us all in and house us and feed us is astronomical, but they choose in that time to have a message about guarding your heart, protecting your heart. It's remarkable.
Yeah, great.
And I don't know, Karen, do you want to talk about what our new push is for what our new motto is?
Oh yeah, it's to be the world's most caring company. So, nothing about the biggest or the best, but, the most caring company. And that's what Chick-fil-A wants to be known for.
Because when you think of Amazon, what do you think of? You think of convenience. When you think of Apple, you think of innovation. When you think of Mercedes-Benz, you're thinking luxury. So our company has got together and they've decided, well, if you think about Chick-fil-A, what do you think about? And this is what they came up with. I'm like, shouldn't it have been chicken or maybe even mac and cheese? Have you tried that? It's great. but that's not what they came. It wasn't speed of service. It wasn't food safety. Ask the Chipotle guys if that's important. It was about making sure that we were caring. And I thought that was an interesting take on it. That's not where I expected Chick-fil-A to go?
Yeah, there's a little bit of evolution there too. I mean, so for a few years we were talking about 10 billion, right? 10 billion was out there and it was mentioned and there would be a little applause, kind of like when we started tonight. That's kind of how the operators felt about it, right? It's like 10 billion, okay, whatever. And when they introduced this idea of becoming the most caring company in the world, I think everybody just like resonated with it instantly. And I mean, it's caught fire within the organization, and it's the thing, you know, that's driving us forward. You mentioned values. Just running deep, Jay and I were just having a conversation the other day about, you know, so many different brands. See what, you know, we're at Target now within the last few years in terms of being a business that's looked at and analyzed. What are they doing? How are they doing this? They're trying to figure it out, and people can try. I like to use the picture of apple stapling, right? Like this idea that I'm going to take a dead tree and staple apples to it, and it's going to work out, right? But anybody knows that a couple days later, those apples are going to be rotten, right? And so you might see that with My Pleasure. You might see that with people dressing up more. You might see that with iPads and some of these innovative things that we've done. But there's so much core to who we are because of Truett and because of the values and the commitment. And I mean, it's, you know, over 5 years since he's passed away now, and it's been extremely impressive and encouraging just to see how committed the family is to continue the legacy that he's built. And so we have that responsibility, as was mentioned, to protect that brand, but we stand on an extremely strong foundation, which is super encouraging.
So this new tagline, is this relatively new in the whole Chick-fil-A family? So do you see it as a way of taking just a core biblical principle and allowing it to flourish in a business environment? I mean, Jesus said, "Love one another," right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Do you connect that biblical principle with this motto, this tagline, this value statement? Is that a conscious sort of thing?
Well, I think when I first met Ryan, that, I mean, this is why you got into the business, isn't it? I mean, you didn't come into this for the money, although the money's going to be really good for you, I know, eventually. But I'm very, very serious. You know, sometimes you take a job because the money's good, right? Who would turn down a job that the money's going to be good, right? And the answer is not too many of you would. But if you get into the business because you know that you can influence people, you can care about your employees, care about your customers, care about the community that you're in. I mean, is that why you got into this?
100%. I was going to say that. I think when they started talking about care, like Corey said, instead of $10 billion of sales, $10 billion of sales doesn't really mean a whole lot, but I think all of us could kind of resonate with, yes, this is why this business. This is like, I was sharing with some other students earlier, like I have no desire to run another fast food restaurant. Zero. Like it's not about the industry itself. It's not about chicken. Like you hear a lot of this, what you always say, it's not a chicken business, it's a people business. And you can't just make that up. You can't just, what do you say, apple stapling? I haven't heard it before, so that's good. But I think to have that model come out and say, yes, this is what brought us here originally, and it's great to see that the whole company's rallying around the concept.
I know when I worked for my old company, we had amazing customer service, and it was an awesome company as well. However, there just wasn't really time, honestly, to care about people or care about the customers on a personal level. Like you treated them well, you smiled and sent them on their way. But here you do have that opportunity to sit down in the dining room with a guest and, you know, talk to them and find out that their wife passed away, or, you know what I mean? Like, and have a conversation and even pray with them. If, you know, it's completely different, and that's okay. And it just feels good to be able to do that and have the time and be encouraged to do that and have your team follow your lead and do the same thing.
Have you seen customers affected by this grace in action, this caring that permeates the entire organization? Have you seen some interesting things happen with customers?
I'd say that customers treat each other very well, and they bond with each other, and you see them talking to each other, and the regulars get to know each other, and it's kind of cool. It's almost like a you guys probably don't know what Cheers is, but it's like a Cheers kind of.
Some of us old people in the room understand exactly what you mean.
But it's just a hangout place where everybody knows each other, and on some level, I see that sometime, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had a story that I didn't even know the family that wrote in, and they wrote in to talk about, one leader in the evening and a team member in the evening as well, and how they had really become part of their family. And they were writing in because it was their last time to be able to come to Chick-fil-A because of where they were moving to, and had just been through some hard health stuff. As well as some financial difficulties. And, it wasn't like it was this amazing free meal or Chick-fil-A for a year or anything super incredible. It's like the team members took time to get to know them, their names, recognize them when they came in, knew when they were coming in, knew what they ordered. Really small things, but just showed a tremendous level of care. And the family felt that deeply. And I mean, as an operator of the business, like getting to hear that and see that and know, that somewhere in that mix was influence to inspire people to do that was pretty rewarding.
Wow, terrific.
Yeah, going back to what Corey said too about just working and doing your job with excellence. I think one of the things we tell our team is doing the expected with excellence and keeping your eyes open for those unexpected opportunities and really teaching them to act in those moments. I think that's the key for us, because these stories, they happen, and it happens often, but it's not every day. We're not getting these testimonials from customers saying, you changed my life. And so I think what we do on a daily basis is the platform for that, provides us the opportunity to do it. And it's things like that. Like just recently I had an older gentleman, he was a big, strong guy, and he said, I want to talk to the owner. And of course I was like, I was
this guy.
Yeah, right. I was scared, and I was like, I hope we didn't do anything wrong. But he was choked up. He had tears in his eyes, and he's like, I just want to let you know, your employee really got me today. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I lost my job earlier today, and one of your employees could sense there was something wrong, and he promo freed my meal, so I didn't have to pay for it. And so for us, that's it cost us $3 for a meal, but it changed this guy's mindset on a very tough day. And so if we can do that with our team members, to encourage them to act in caring ways towards our guests, we're going to have a positive influence on our world around us. And
you give them permission to do this.
Yes.
Making their own decisions. They don't have to come back and talk to the owner or the manager at the moment, right?
Yeah, we want to, because when we talk about the cost of that for us is so small, but the impact is so high. So when we talk about marketing, how we use our marketing dollars, it's stuff like that turns people into loyal fans. It's not a billboard.
Yeah.
Or an advertisement on TV. It's team members acting with care in real time.
Wow.
It's huge. It's huge for our team member. I mean, the guest impact's awesome, but the team member impact's incredible too. To have that power to be able to do that and make that decision and really feel a part owner in making that decision is incredible. I remember we had one year or two where we did around the holidays at the mall. I told each team member, I challenged them to give two meals away an hour, which was a high cost. We had a different marketing play we had cut, and so we were going into this. And the team was kind of resistant. People don't really deserve this, right?
Wow.
And it's just
You're
interesting.
forcing grace.
Team's more protective almost of our stuff than we are sometimes. But I remember one leader promoted a whole family. I don't even think she realized it at first. It was somebody was ordering, and then more people just kept coming for the family, and all of a sudden it was 6 or 7 meals. And I think she was kind of oh man, is this okay? But the father, came back after the meal and said, I just want you to know, and told her this, that you restored my son's faith in humanity. He said that, right? So,
wow.
And that I didn't know the impact that had on my team member that night was huge.
Wow.
And I think that's what's great about this company that we work for is we get to make that decision. This is not a corporate policy. This is not dictated from on high. This is we're franchisees, so we're under the thumb of corporate America, right? But Chick-fil-A gives us that opportunity to really influence people. In fact, they want us to influence the community, influence our team members, influence our customers. And that's what's great about Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
we get-
authentically motivated. It's not
Absolutely.
to make the business better. It's just to do the right thing.
Right. Yeah. There was a few of our older employees, older than 70, that had one story for each of them. One, she had been off for a while due to some health issues, and people noticed, and we're trying to figure out, like, where's Miss Sheila? Where's Miss Sheila? And then the day that she came back to just tell us that she was coming back was a celebratory day. But as I was standing there talking to her in the dining room, a little girl who was like 3 just came running up to her and just gave her a huge hug. It was like, Miss Sheila, and it was just like, I was like,
Wow.
like this is family. Like they were not real, not like blood family, biological family, but this little girl had missed one of our employees. I was like, that is ridiculous. And then we all get these comments. If you want to complain about going to a restaurant, we'll get it through our emails.
Send them to Ryan's
Yeah,
restaurant.
that's right. And we'll get, some of us get more than others. No, I'm just kidding. But usually it's complaints. So something that was wrong, missed something or whatever. Every now and then, and like this one example, we got a comment that said, just want to let you know, I was having an awful day. The cashier or the register person could sense it, asked what was wrong, and I told him like X, Y, and Z happened, and next thing he asked to do was if he could pray with me, and it changed my day. And sometimes I'll share that with like newer employees, and I'm like, I'm not asking you to pray with every person that comes to the
Yeah.
counter, but like others have alluded, giving them the freedom that don't be weird about it, but you can feel free to make an impact on somebody's day.
Wow. We just don't hear that
had-
in most contexts. Yeah, Karen.
I had just one story that I'll just never forget. I had this woman who would come in all the time, and she was an older lady, and she was kind of difficult, to be honest. Like every time she came in, she would bring her sandwich back because something wasn't right about it. The tomatoes weren't fresh enough, or the lettuce wasn't crispy enough, or whatever. And it was
She's in my
just
restaurant too.
yeah. But it just kind of turned into like I felt I was the only one who could deal with her. Like by then it was always like, all right, fine, I'll go talk to her because everybody else upsets her. And somehow over this whole sandwich issue, we kind of bonded, and she told me her daughter had passed away from cancer, and we just had a connection. And then it just, I don't know, she would come in, she'd ask me, and it wasn't such a chore anymore. And she'd be like, I want that nice piece of lettuce and the good tomatoes. I'm like, okay, well, I'll make sure. And I'd go back and I'd be like, Miss Margaret's here. And then
We need the Miss
I
Margaret.
need the good, the good tomatoes.
That's an
and,
alias, by the way.
and then one day I got a call, and it was from her, and she's like, oh, Karen, she's like, I'm in such a bind. I need to get my prescription, and I'm $20 short. I don't have anywhere else to go. And I'm like, I got it for you. Just come on down. And then it turned into this thing, and every month it was kind of like she'd borrow 40, and then 2 weeks later she'd pay it back, and then she'd come borrow 60, and then she'd pay it back. And my husband works with me, and he graduated from here as a finance major, and he would just look at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's fine. I just feel like I'm supposed to help her. And it kind of turned into this like beautiful thing where she was always good for it. And I didn't care if she came back, honestly, but she'd always come back, and I'm like, just if you need it, just keep it. She's like, no, because I know I'm going to need you next month. And so I'm like, okay. So, and it was just was such an unlikely friendship. She was 86, and she could barely get out of her car. She'd come on her cane and hobble in, and everyone would be like, Karen, Miss Margaret's here. And they didn't even know why I never told them about the money piece, so no one really knew what was going on. But it was really sweet. And then one day she called me to say that she was, had been taken into hospice care, and she wanted me to come see her. And, I went and said goodbye to her, and I knew it was the last I was going to see her. And it was just kind of a cool story from a difficult customer to someone who became, it's like, I think she saw me as family by the end, and it was just a special relationship.
That's a redemptive story. That's the way the gospel works. I suspect that we have some students that would like to ask you some questions. Would you mind fielding a couple questions from students? And if you do have a question, rather than me running up and down, maybe just come on down to the front here and ask a question. We'd be happy to entertain any questions for our guests. Anybody like to ask a question?
Sean's ready for all the hard ones. So.
Yeah.
I'm going to go make sure your nuggets are ready, but before I do, maybe you could tell us a little bit about a day in a life. What's a day in your life look like, being an owner-operator?
I think Ryan should start since he's the newest, because he's probably working harder than the rest of us.
That's not quite true. There's not a typical day for me right now. There is, in that it's always going to be unpredictable. But by and large, the goal is to make it a little more predictable. Is that a good way of saying it? Where a typical day might mean strategizing for, I'll use Jay's example, strategizing for like a third of the day, analyzing the way we're doing things a third of the day, and then jumping in and running a register for a third of the day. The problem is some of those thirds can get jacked up pretty quickly with broken equipment or missed deliveries or 3 people calling off, that kind of thing. So I think the only thing that's really predictable is the unpredictability.
I would say a lot of us would probably view our main role as coaching and developing our leaders. So I think a lot of meeting preparation and time with them is where a lot of our day is spent as well.
Wow. Okay. Cool. We have some students that are going off to get some early nuggets, apparently. So. Anybody have a question? Yeah. Come on out here. All right. Well, I'll pass it down. We can do this.
I just had a question because I know a lot of you were probably had a store at this time with the ChickfilA Appreciation Day in, I think, 2012, when it was like the largest record-selling day. I actually got the chance to go to a Chick-fil-A that day. I just wondered if any of you could like talk about your experience with that, because I know when I was there as a customer, it was really, really cool to see all of the people there and kind of how like all the employees were working together, and there was just other people. Like there was like a motorcycle gang there that had randomly showed up, and they had like crosses on their leather jackets and were holding open the doors for everyone. It was just really cool. So I was wondering if any of you could talk about your experience with that.
Yeah, I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, so I was running a corporate-owned unit at the time, and the record sales for that unit were about $16,000, I think, that had done grand opening, and so our sales that day were $30,000. It was pretty incredible to us that we had enough product to stay open. Like several stores shut down that day, so I think we ran out of pickles and strips at our restaurant, and the rest we had. I think we knew we had a corporate visit that day as well. And we kind of strategized the night before to kind of talk about it, but I mean, nobody had any idea that it was going to blow up like it did. And so one of the consultants and the other one that was there were kind of on their way out to get lunch together away from the restaurant. And they saw the line in the drive-thru, and they turned around, and the gentleman from corporate hopped in and helped us. I mean, and we were just hands-on, full go all day. We worked, so we closed at 10, and I think we were done serving at about 10:45 from like honoring the people that were in line. And then everybody just kind of sat down. We reflected on what happened, and we ordered pizza, and then we cleaned up the rest of it. So, I mean, it was really incredible. It was really galvanizing for me and that team. That team had lost their cherished operator to the corporate staff. And then had a couple interims come in for like 3 months, and they didn't have their new operator yet. And so it was then me and somebody else from corporate that was brand new that came in to run the store. And so it was just tough on the team to kind of experience that. And so we got to really bond in a unique way that day. It was really special. It was really, really neat outpouring there.
Great.
So we broke record sales that day as well. And I'll never forget, I was actually buttering buns. That was my job. That was the only thing they let me to do. So you have to put it in the top and put it in the top. And I pulled some muscles back here because I buttered so many buns. But I remember about 7:30 that night, one of my managers came back and said, "There's a kid stuck in your play area." And I'm like, "I'm buttering buns. I don't care." You know what I mean? And he goes, "No, he's stuck in the playground." I'm like, "Tell his mom to go up in the tubes and get the little brat and bring him down, right? Because I'm buttering buns." And he goes, "No, I think you need to come out." So I came out, and at the end of our slide, there's netting so that the kids can't climb up it. he was stuck between the end of the slide and the netting, and it was pushing into his face. And I'm like, I got a line out the door. We cut the netting and got the kid out eventually. But
You could have used the butter.
we could have used the butter. Yeah, stick some buns on them, you'll be fine. But I will tell you that we strategized as well, and we actually had to rent a cop that day because we knew that traffic was going to be pretty horrible. But we were very, very fortunate because we also had protesters at our restaurant. And so they told us that they put sheets on everybody's windshield that told them that I needed to resign from all of my posts. I was a volunteer for my township. I was on the Economic Development Advisory Council. I was the president of the local library. I needed to resign because I was working for a company that lacked a moral compass. So I was pretty shocked to find that I went to bed on Tuesday night as a fine, upstanding businessman in my community, only to find out that I was a hate-filled bigot on Monday or Wednesday morning. So the rent-a-cop came, and I went out to the protesters, and I said, I rented this cop to do traffic, but if any of my customers start to give you grief, feel free to come over to the cop and so that you're not, there's no physical altercations. And I will tell you that the protesters were as dumb as a bag of bricks. They had no idea why they were there. They were told to protest Jesus chicken, and that is why they were there. And they had no idea that I had put money out for a rent-a-cop. It cost me about $800 that day, and they didn't thank me, so I don't know what the deal was. But we ran out of lemons, so.
Yeah, that's better.
Wow.
Oh, and okay, there's another story I want to tell you before I answer that. So, in a strange twist of events, the Jim Henson Company was providing us our toys for our kids' meal bags. And if you listen to the Jim Henson Company, you'll find out that this story is completely wrong according to them. What it was is some of the eyes were coming off the puppets, and we recalled them because we didn't want anyone to get choked. If you look at the press afterwards, they recalled them because they didn't want to do business with a company that lacked a moral compass, apparently. Well, I didn't strategize really well, but what I did do is I had 500 copies of the U.S. Constitution overnighted to my restaurant, and every time you came to my restaurant and you ordered a kid's meal, you got a copy of the Constitution.
All right, let's go.
Woo! It didn't go over very well.
And that, my friends, is the origin story of Graham Philby becoming a political science
and Graham
major.
is a poli-sci major.
All right, we have a question here.
Thank you, guys. So, what, if any, impact did the new Kanye West album have on your sales?
Chick-fil-A! I
think just
We listen
that our
to,
team
we listen to
mem- our
country
team
in West
members love
Virginia.
it. Yeah.
I really tried to like the song. I did.
We haven't seen an impact yet, but we're hoping that it will. I will tell you that when Popeyes came out with their chicken sandwich, which I understand is really good, I've actually not had it.
Apple stapling.
Apple stapling. Their sales, of course, went up, and their staff couldn't handle it. Our sales also went up. I had a noticeable about a 10% increase during the Popeyes
Wow.
little Twitter war, if you will.
Just getting people to think about chicken sandwiches.
And they're hungry, and they always come on Sunday. I don't know why. It's like, I'm sorry I can't serve you today.
Wow.
So.
Right. We have another question here.
Kanye West.
Hi, great talk so far. So it seems like Chick-fil-A is pretty open to hiring like people for their first job, like younger teenagers between.
Yes, we're all hiring. We're all hiring.
People between the age of 15 to like 17, maybe 18. Why is Chick-fil-A open to taking an opportunity like that, whereas other companies and restaurants might not be as open to doing something like that?
We have the sales. I mean, the sales are there. We need people.
We need people.
Right? No.
It's a really good question, though, because I think everyone here will agree that we are amazed at the amount of responsibility we give to teenagers and how well they respond to that. So I think sometimes we lower the expectations for kids in terms of what they can handle and what they can do. But I think what I found is if you hire people that come from good families and they have a good work ethic, you can give them a lot of responsibility and they actually love it. And so, some of our best employees who create those experiences for our guests are people who this is their first job. Versus getting someone who's been bounced around a lot in different restaurants, working for different companies, and they're kind of jaded by past work experiences. People that are 15, 16, 17 are super moldable, and they're eager to grow, and I think that's why they do so well with us.
It's pretty known that Chick-fil-A hires 14 and 15-year-olds too, so our biggest candidate pool is 14 and 15-year-olds, and so we can't carry a lot just because there's so many restrictions from the federal government. So I always ask them, like, if they're 14, 15, do they know how to use scissors? Do they know how to climb a ladder? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, you can't do that here. So there's a lot of risk when it comes to the 14, 15-year-olds. So if you're comfortable with them being responsible for that, so you want them to be responsible for it, but the responsibility falls on you if they cut themselves or climb a ladder and fall. So, as long as you're comfortable with that, it's huge, because if we don't reach out to them when they're 14 and 15 and respond to that initial application that they put in, and when they turn 16, they're looking elsewhere as well. And a lot of those 14 are eager. Like, that's really exciting for us, that they want a job, they want to come to work, and like Jay mentioned, it's an opportunity to mold and shape them early, and you get a ton of return for that.
And then if you get a 15-year-old, like Corey said, you kind of get the cream of the crop because no one else is going to hire them, so you have your pick. And then if they, stay with you all through high school and then potentially go to college locally, you could have that person for a good 7 years, which is, if you start when they're 18, 19, you don't have that same opportunity.
I interviewed a 14-year-old, and one of the spiels I have for my teenagers is, it may be incumbent upon you to clean our restrooms, thinking that will, say, okay, I'm not doing this. And the young lady answered back, she goes, I muck out alpaca stalls. There's nothing these people can do that can compare to that. I hired her, and she's my best employee, one of my best employees. And I got her at 14, and she'll be with me for for another 4 years probably.
Good question.
Well, I think we have been really treated to a great insight into your businesses and into the culture of Chick-fil-A. Hasn't this been great, folks? Can we give them a hand? We are so glad that you've been here, and we're going to have a time to kind of eat some nuggets and to connect with you out here in the atrium. Just want to remind you of a couple of things. There are people at each door that are holding blue tickets. You have to have a ticket in order to get some nuggets. Otherwise, we'd have the whole campus here. We might not have enough nuggets for that. So get a ticket from one of the folks here at the doors, and you can get in line for nuggets. If you need to sign into a class, you can do that out here. There's a table of sign-in sheets. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you. That's great.